first contingent of US troops has landed in Poland for military exercises as tensions with Russia over Ukraine increase. The troops are expected to be carrying out military exercises in Poland and some Baltic states for the coming months.
Well, those countries have expressed concern at the recent build-up of Russian troops along its Ukraine borders. Meantime, both the UK and the Netherlands have confirmed that they've had to escort Russian jets out of their airspaces this week. Well, Andy Hunder is the director of the Ukrainian Institute in London. He joins me now live from there to discuss the growing tensions in the region. Andy Hunder, thanks very much for your time. With the exchange of words we're hearing across the continent, and including Moscow, of course, with NATO jets chasing away a Russian jet that was buzzing a US warship, are we seeing another Cold War in the making, or perhaps worse?
Well, it looks like it. I think the relations between East and West are probably the most frostiest and the coldest they have been since the Cold War. With what's happened over the last couple of months is that with Russia's invasion of Crimea, with Russian troops, 50,000 on the border of Ukraine, with Russian special forces being sent into eastern Ukraine, creating a lot of disruption, creating a lot of havoc. And I think NATO now is really showing its muscle in terms of the forces that have been sent both to Poland and to the Baltic states. So I think that this is getting more and more serious, and I think what's going on in President Putin's head at the moment. He is the oppressor. He's trying to position himself sometimes as the victim, that he's coming in to save Russian speakers across the region, including Ukraine. But next, this could be the Baltics with Estonia and Latvia, who are NATO members. I mean, Ukraine is not a NATO member, but Latvia and Estonia are. So I think that is really what the message is coming across from the West and NATO to Russia now, is saying, we have to stop Putin in some shape or form, and we have to do it pretty soon.
Andy Hunder, why hasn't NATO done more to do more about these developing tensions in the region?
I think one of the reasons is primarily Ukraine is not and has not become a member of NATO. There were attempts and talks, especially in 2008, when Ukraine was almost became a member of NATO. But Russia's done everything possible for that not to happen. I think it will be Russia's worst nightmare if Ukraine ever were to become part of NATO. In terms of what we're seeing at the moment is NATO and the West did give assurances. I mean, the West, mainly the three major members of NATO, the two members, the United States and the United Kingdom, gave assurances to Ukraine after Ukraine became independent in 1991, when it gave up its nuclear arsenal. Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, bigger than that of France, the United Kingdom and China combined. And it gave it up voluntarily, gave it up to Russia in exchange for assurances from Russia, the United States and the United Kingdom that its territorial integrity and sovereignty will be preserved. What we've seen now is that that has been violated. Russia has invaded Ukraine, and NATO now is really scratching its head in terms the NATO country members are really seeing what they can do to stop a further movement of Russian forces into Europe.
Andy, as you pointed out, that recent history there, the post-independence history for Ukraine, at this juncture, how would the Ukrainian leadership and the Ukrainian people feel as they feel as though deals have been dishonoured on both sides of their borders?
Well, Ukraine, it's finding itself, it's a buffer zone. It's found between a big Russian military and a big NATO military, and it's right bang in the middle. So, the concerns are there. And what we have seen over the last days is that Russian special troops have been sent into eastern Ukraine. They are creating a lot of disruption out there. The forecast is in the short term, we will see an escalation of events. We'll see more Russian disruption coming into Ukraine. So I think that this is going to ignite further. And the question is really, what the West will do. So far, we've seen sanctions that have been quite soft. There is talk of a third level of sanctions, really hitting both President Putin and his closest allies where it hurts. Because, as I've said before, Putin is more afraid of banks than tanks. Freezing the assets, freezing the wealth they've accumulated, and that may have more an effect, than showing the military might of the tanks on Ukraine's borders.
Andy Hunder, you have spent a lot of time in Ukraine. You were a presenter on a Ukrainian TV channel. You have done PR in the country for a good part of the last 2 decades or so. Would you have ever imagined that you'd be sitting here talking about the state of Ukraine at this moment in time, given the changes that have happened over the last few months?
I think the way that things have evolved over the last months, I would never have thought that it would have gone to this far. What is going on in Vladimir Putin's head at the moment, only God knows. I think, we are seeing analogies of 1938 and what the Nazis were doing, what Adolf Hitler was doing prior to an invasion of Europe. I think the analogies there are really scary, they're shocking, but they are very much analogous of what happened then. So it's really now the West to see, whether it sits back and allows Putin to push forwards across Europe, or whether that they stand up and prevent what could be, a massive war and a takeover of Europe by Vladimir Putin.
Well, Andy, the Estonian president has said what's needed right now in some Eastern European countries and Baltic countries, including, of course, his own, as a message to Moscow, is more boots on the ground, more troops. How likely is that?
At the moment, I think it's going to be challenging to find a consensus between all 28 NATO members to actually send in NATO boots onto Ukrainian soil. I think in the short term, it's unlikely. However, decisions will need to be made very, very quickly to stop the oppression, because lives are at risk, casualties. And until Vladimir Putin is stopped with this aggressive move across Europe, the consequences could be very, very severe.
Andy Hunder, the director of the Ukrainian Institute in London, from London, thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.